Open the top drawer of a desk in 1963 and there's a good chance you'd find an ashtray. Not hidden, not contraband. Standard issue, as ordinary as a stapler. The person sitting at that desk could light a cigarette during a meeting, pour a drink before lunch, and call a man across the office honey without anyone blinking. Every single one of those things could end a career today. Some could end a company. And yet for an entire generation of Americans, that wasn't rule-breaking. That was just Tuesday. This is a list of 10 things the average office worker did in the 1960s, things that were completely normal, completely accepted, and in some cases completely legal, that would now get you walked out of the building by security. Some of them will make you a little wistful. And then, somewhere around number 4, this list takes a turn, and you'll start to understand what that world was actually built on. Stay with me, because the last few aren't charming at all. We're going to use the office as our lens, and there's a reason for that. The office is where the 20th century kept its rules. It's where society wrote down, in dress codes and hiring ads and unspoken etiquette, exactly who it valued and how. Change the office and you've changed the country. And between then and now, the office changed almost beyond recognition. The question underneath all 10 of these is simple. Was that a world we lost or a world we escaped? Hold on to that, because the answer isn't the one you'd expect walking in. Number 1. You smoked at your desk. Indoors all day, no questions asked. In 1965, roughly half of American men smoked, and the office didn't just permit it. It was built around it. Ashtrays came with the furniture. The air in a busy department by 4 in the afternoon was visibly blue. Tobacco companies ran ads aimed straight at the working professional, selling cigarettes as the tool of the focused modern mind. Nobody asked a coworker to step outside, because there was no outside to step to. It was simply the texture of the room. Number 2, you drank on the clock, and your boss might have poured it. The three-martini lunch wasn't a punchline yet. It was a business practice. Common enough that decades later, politicians would argue about whether it should stay tax-deductible. A long lunch with a client meant a real drink, often several, and then you came back and finished the afternoon. Senior men kept a bottle in the bottom drawer for closing a deal or ending a hard week. Showing up to that culture sober and tense could actually read as not being a team player. Number 3, when you left at 5, you vanished. This is the one people get genuinely nostalgic about, and it's worth being precise about why. It wasn't a policy. Nobody granted the 1960s worker the right to disconnect. It was simply a fact of physics. The work lived in the building, in the filing cabinets, on the paper, in the one telephone on the desk. When you walked out, there was no device in your pocket that the office could reach. Your evening was yours not because anyone protected it, but because the technology to invade it hadn't been invented. We didn't lose a rule, we lost a wall. Number 4, and here's where the list starts to change. You called a grown woman honey, sweetheart, or doll, and it was considered polite. The women in that office were overwhelmingly in support roles, and the language used toward them every day was casual, familiar, and diminishing in a way most people didn't even register as a choice. It was the water everyone swam in. But notice what just happened. Numbers 1 through 3 cost the worker something: their lungs, their judgment, their evening. Number 4 cost someone else. From here on, that's the pattern, and it gets steeper. Number 5, you were hired or not hired based on your sex, and the newspaper said so out loud. Into the 1960s, classified job ads in major American papers were printed in 2 separate columns. Help wanted, male. Help wanted, female. The good jobs, the jobs with a ladder attached, ran in the men's column. The women's column ran the typing, the filing, the answering. This wasn't a quiet bias you had to infer. It was the layout of the page. Even after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, It took years of pressure before paper stopped sorting opportunity by gender in print. Number 6. If you were black, the office mostly didn't open at all, and if it did, the ceiling was low and visible. The mid-century white-collar world was in most of the country a white world by default. Discrimination wasn't a scandal that occasionally surfaced, it was the operating system. The same Civil Rights Act that challenged those job columns was the first real federal crowbar against it. And first real crowbar tells you everything about how solid the door had been. Number 7. Your boss could comment on your body, your marriage, your weight, your plans to have children, and you had nowhere to take it. There was no human resources department in the modern sense. No hotline. No process. The word for what a powerful man said to a less powerful employee was just what he said. The concept that this could be a violation, that it could have a name and a consequence, did not exist in the workplace yet. If number 3 was a wall we lost, this is a wall that hadn't been built, and the people standing exposed without it were almost never the ones in the corner office. If you're keeping track, you can feel the list tilting. We started with a man and his cigarette. We're now standing in front of the machinery that decided whose career was even possible. 3 to go, and they're the ones that explain the rest. Number 8. You followed a dress code nobody ever wrote down, and it policed more than clothing. For men, the uniform was rigid: suit, tie, short hair, clean shave. For women, it was stricter and more personal. Hemlines, stockings, the expectation of a particular kind of presentation, enforced by supervisors who felt entirely entitled to enforce it. The unwritten part was the point, because it was never on paper, it could never quite be argued with. It was just standards, and standards always seem to ask the most of the people with the least power. Number 9. You handled other people's private information with almost no guardrails. Personnel files, salaries, medical notes, home addresses. It sat in unlocked cabinets, passed through the typing pool, copied onto carbon paper, discussed openly. The modern idea that personal data is something a company holds in trust, with rules and liability attached, simply wasn't there. It wasn't that the 1960s office was reckless on purpose. It's that the entire concept of a privacy obligation hadn't arrived yet. The information was just lying there, and so was the risk. Number 10. You could be fired on Friday for almost any reason or no reason with no notice, and that was considered normal in both directions. Job security in that era is remembered as rock solid, and for a specific worker, often a white man on a defined track, it genuinely could be, but the flip side rarely makes the highlight reel. Protections against arbitrary or discriminatory firing were thin to non-existent. The stability so many people remember wasn't distributed evenly. It was a benefit of the system for the people the system was designed around. For everyone else, the same informality that felt like freedom from the top felt like exposure from the bottom. So now go back to that drawer, the ashtray, and the bottle next to it. Here's what's strange about all 10 of these, and it's the thing the nostalgia usually skips. They're not really 10 separate items. They're one trade, seen from 10 angles. The 1960s office gave its workers something real, looser rules, a workday with a hard edge, an evening that couldn't be touched, a kind of casual ease that genuinely has not survived. That part of the memory is true. It is worth feeling something about, but it bought that ease with someone else's account. The same informality that let a man keep a bottle in his desk, let his boss say anything he wanted to, the woman 2 desks over, with no one to tell. The same world that didn't follow you home at 5 also didn't let half the population through the front door at 9. The freedom was real. It just wasn't a public good. It was a private one, and the price was paid quietly, in the columns of the newspaper and the silence where a complaint should have been. That's the answer to the question we started with. Was it a world we lost, or a world we escaped? It's both, and it depends entirely on which desk you were sitting at. Most of what we miss and most of what we fixed turn out to be the exact same thing, looked at from two different chairs. The office didn't just get more restrictive, it got more honest about who it was for. And maybe that's the real reason these 10 things feel so far away. It's not only that the rules changed, it's that the room finally has more than one kind of person in it to remember what it used to be like. If a part of you still feels that pull toward the quiet of a 5 o'clock with no notifications, you're not wrong to. Just remember that the quiet and the cost shared the same desk. If you found this fascinating, hit subscribe for more stories about the world we used to live in and the one we traded it for.